Alright, Assalamualaikum and good morning to everyone watching. My name is Irfan Danish and I'm from DC5C. So today I will be presenting my slides for my variation interview with my friends. So our group consists of me, Irfan Danish, Muhammad Amri Zikri, Muhammad Ijaz, and Aiman Hakim. I interviewed someone from Nigeria, which is considered as a circle. Our project overview is that our goal is to gather valuable insights into their unique experiences, cultural backgrounds, and perspectives on English. We were able to identify challenges faced in language learning, translation, or adaptation, offering valuable information for us to analyze. Studying English in Kachru's outer and expanding circles allows us to perceive the differences of English worldwide, even as if it's considered as the lingua franca.
Okay.
All right, good morning and warm greetings. I am Irfan Danish. I am from College Professional Mara Sri Iskandar. Thank you very much for joining me in this interview. First, before we begin, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and everything.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Udugwe Samuel. I'm from Nigeria. I'm currently studying in University Technology Petro now, master's degree. So that's all for now.
I see. Thank you. What should I call you? sir? What?
Samuel.
Samuel, right? All right. So, Mr. Samuel, my first question is, were there any main historical events that led to the spread of English in your country?
Okay, thank you. In Nigeria, I'm from Nigeria. Uh, so Nigeria was colonized by the British government. So they brought in English language, just as Malaysia was also colonized by British. So that was how we used English language as our lingua franca. Although in Nigeria we have many tribes, so different tribes have different languages. We have more than 700 tribes and languages in Nigeria because Nigeria is one of the most populous countries uh, in the world. So in Africa, in Nigeria, we have many languages, but we all speak English language, and also we modify the English language to what we know as pidgin English. That's pidgin English.
Yes.
So for those that cannot speak English very well, they can speak pidgin English. That's all for now.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Now, towards the second language, is English being used as an official language for education in Nigeria?
Yes. English is the official language used in teaching in schools in Nigeria.
What about your native language? Is it still being used as well as English?
Yeah. We use I'm Igbo by tribe, so we speak Igbo. So other languages are also taught in school, and we also write exams on them. They are also taught in the universities, like Igbo language, Yoruba language, Hausa language. So they are also being used to teach uh, people, especially people that are still in the villages, that they can use the native language to teach them. There are also textbooks written in the native language.
Oh, I see. Understood. Thank you. Now, on to the third question. How has English evolved and progressed in Nigeria over the years? You mentioned about pidgin. has it changed so far?
Oh, like, okay, English has evolved. We have some TV stations that speak, they have English, pure English news. We also have pidgin English news, so and other sub languages. So I think English has evolved in the sense that it is being taught right from nursery school. You understand? So it's being taught. So sometimes it looks like the English wants to replace the indigenous language of the people, but the families are the ones that uphold the other languages of their tribe, because that is mostly what is spoken in the homes. Although some families also speak English at homes, but it is advisable for families to speak the native language to their children, and also to also to teach their children English. Yeah.
Okay. Now, coming to Malaysia to study, of course, you would have to use English mainly to communicate, yes? How do you feel about
Yeah,
English
yeah.
becoming more dominant in your daily life? How do you feel about having to use it every day?
English is just like normal to me, because right from when I was small, I've been speaking English, so I don't see it as an issue. Yeah, so it's not really an issue because almost all the countries in the world, both other countries that speak different languages, definitely if you speak English, there must be somebody that can at least understand a bit. So I don't see it as a problem in my daily life.
Okay, that's very good. Um, Now moving on. So far, as long as you've used English, has it been difficult for you to understand English based on how it sounds? Uh, like maybe Nigerian English, Pidgin, and maybe Malaysian English sounds different that you find difficult. Do you have an example that you can share with us?
No, not really. I understand the languages because it's the same language, only the accent that is different. So actually, I understand. I don't have any challenges
Oh, I see.
understanding.
That's great. I can I can respect that. Right. Now, are there any English sounds or words that do not exist in your native language? How do you handle them when you want to communicate?
Yes, there are some words that are not they are not in our native language, like borrowed maybe in sciences or technology. So we call it the same. Understand? So there are also some words that in our language that is not also in English. So normally we understand it, just like science is called science in English, but we call it in our native language science. Okay, but there's how we pronounce it. So
Oh,
I think there's no problem, there's no issue because everyone understands what we are trying to pass across.
okay. I understand. Now, lastly, do you find Malaysian English dialects and accent difficult to understand or process? If you do, can you share your experience or maybe uh or maybe an example? So,
As I already said, I don't find the English uh, difficult to understand because I interact with the locals. I also interact with the professors in the school. So I understand the different. I understand them clearly, so there's no issue. Like I don't have any issue understanding the English.
So you've been very proficient with English since you were a child lah. That's amazing.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So I think that's it for this interview. I would like to thank you so much for answering a few of my questions, and I hope everything goes well in the future for you and everyone around you. Thank you so much, Samuel. Good day.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Bye.
Moving on to my interviewee's background. His full name is Undukwe Samuel. He prefers to be called as Mr. Samuel, and his country of origin is, of course, Nigeria. Currently, he is a student of University Technology Petronas, and he has a degree in science technology. His history in English is that he uses Nigerian pidgin English in his home country, but he also speaks Igbo, which is a native West African language. For the first uh, summary for findings and reflections from aspect number one, my question was, were there any main historical events that led to the spread of English in your country? And based on his response, Mr. Samuel shared that Nigeria has a history of colonization by the British, which led to English being the lingua franca. He also connected the situation to be similar to Malaysia, where we had British uh, colonize us, bringing English with them. Next, my question was, is English being used as an official language for education in your country? And his response was that in schools in Nigeria, English used to as an official language for education. Similar to Malaysian school syllabus, Nigeria also uses their native language among other subjects alongside English. So in Malaysia, we would have Bahasa Malaysia and English. Nigeria also shares the same style. Next, how has English evolved and progressed your country in your country over the years? In Nigeria, standard and pidgin English is being used in media. However, even as English threatens to replace their native language, Mr. Samuel stated that it is often their own family members who teach them to use their mother tongue of their tribes. This is to preserve each of their unique cultural identity. And a fun fact is that in Africa, there's over 100 unique languages from different tribes. Next, we have, how do you feel about English becoming more dominant in your daily life? Mr. Samuel showed indifference in this matter, as to him, English is his usual language to speak, even in Nigeria, with English being used worldwide. This can be related to his use of Nigerian pidgin English. And next, we have, is it difficult for you to understand English based on how it sounds? I asked him to give an example. However, Mr. Samuel does not face any difficulties with English, as there is no huge differences in the English we speak compared to Nigerian pidgin English. Hence, he was able to understand and use standard English proficiently during his time here in Malaysia. My sixth question, are there any English sounds that does not exist in your native language? How do you handle them? Mr. Samuel stated that that such issues exist among the two languages that he speaks, Igbo and English. However, due to the similarities in Standard English and Nigerian Pidgin English, this proved to be of no trouble to him. Even as he speaks in Igbo, most Nigerians are able to understand English well. Some examples uh, uh, that apply are science and technology, where the difference applies on pronunciation. And lastly, do you find Malaysian English dialects and accents difficult to understand? Can you share your experience? Uh, and based on his response, I got that due to his diligence and frequent communication with locals and professors at his university, Mr. Samuel was able to align himself with Malaysian English well. In addition to his proficiency in English since childhood, he stresses how he does not find any problems using English in Malaysia. So, for my justification regarding this interview, English arrived in Nigeria through British colonial rule in the 19th century. The British established control over Nigerian territories, and English became the language of administration, law, and education. Even after Nigeria gained independence in 1960, English remained the official language, a lasting legacy of British influence. Nonetheless, Mr. Samuel has no issue with using English as its worldwide use allows him to communicate well due to his mastery over English and his mother tongue.
All right.
Okay.
I can.
Uh,
All right.
oh, yeah, Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Where are you now?
At the university, in my workstation.
Oh, you
Yes.
work at UTP, University Technology Petronas, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm doing masters, and I work
Oh,
as research assistant.
oh, right. So can we start right now?
Yeah, sure, can.
All right. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To Mr. Osama, right? Osama,
Yes.
right. So before we start, can you introduce about yourself first? Like your
Okay.
age, occupation, your education background, and so on.
Okay. My name is Usama. I
All
am
right.
from Egypt. 29, almost 30 years old. I'm going to turn 30 this July. Uh, my background is from civil engineering, and currently I'm doing masters at University Technology Petronas, and I work as research assistant as well. That's it.
All right. So, before we start, how long you live in Malaysia?
I first come to Malaysia in December 2015.
2050. All right.
Yeah, I did my bachelor here, but I
Mm,
left in 2021. Then I come back for masters in 2023.
all right. So, can we proceed with the main question?
Yes,
All
sure.
right. So, for the first question, that I want to ask is, were there any main historical events that led to the spread of English in your country?
Historical events. Yes, sure. The British occupation in Egypt between 1882 and to 1956. So this contributed to the spread of English in Egypt. Yes.
All right. So, the second question is English being used as an official language for education in your country right now?
Actually, English is not an official language, but English is used in education, and it is widely used, especially in private and international schools. Uh, Additionally, in universities, and some in some schools of higher education. Yeah, I used to study engineering in English before I come to Malaysia, and the syllabus, everything was in English. So yeah, it is widely used.
So it is considered the second language in your country?
Yeah, maybe yeah, but not officially.
Not official.
Yeah,
Alright.
you can widely find it in the educational sector.
Alright.
Yes, but
Understand.
okay.
So the third question is, how has English evolved and progressed in your country over the years?
Uh, English, okay. Over the years, English has become essential for business, education, tourism as well, because Egypt is common with tourist places, technology as well. All of this make the English as a key skill for career development. Yeah.
Alright. So we go through to the fourth question.
Okay.
So how do you feel about English becoming more dominant in your daily life?
Feeling about English dominance, it's useful for the global communication and opportunities. Uh, we can make connections worldwide easily, but it can sometimes overshadow our mother language, for me as Arabic in certain fields. So this can be like a disadvantage, but mostly it's okay. Yeah, it will be. It's good because it is a communication worldwide.
So when you work here,
Mm.
you always use English or Malay to speak with other people.
English, and this is a disadvantage
Hmm.
because yeah,
Yeah.
because if uh, if the English is not the dominance like this, we will learn Malay and we will identify the culture of Malaysia more. But because English is like a worldwide language and it is dominant in many places, so we just communicate using it. So this is a pros and cons.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Right. So for the fifth question is it difficult for you to understand English based on how it sounds? And can you give any examples?
About understanding English sounds. Okay, some accents can be difficult to understand,
Hmm.
especially the very fast speech or the slang words, the strong regional accents. Um, Especially or mainly the slang words. It's a bit difficult to understand it because normally when we learn English, we learn the very official language. So normally when it comes to slang in especially in media and in movies like this, some words become difficult to understand.
All right. So we moving to the sixth question.
Okay.
Uh, are there any English sounds that does not exist in your native language, and how do you handle them?
Okay. For example, like P for pen.
Yes.
This one doesn't exist in Arabic, and normally we pronounce it wrong. Normally we pronounce it B, like B for book. This is a common mistake that we do in Egypt. Um, but practice with practice and exposure help. Um, we can handle it. Mm.
Right. So we just go to the last question. So
Okay.
for the last question, do you find Malaysian English dialects and accents difficult to understand? And can you share your experience about this?
Yes. because some Malaysian accents and pronunciation can be challenging at the first, because Malaysian also involves some Malay words in when speaking in English, like la. They use it. You The Malaysian people, yeah, they use it a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
even when they are speaking in English. But
Mm.
with the time, and because I spent here many years, so it become normal. I can understand well.
Right. So when you stay here for a long time, you can adapt with our slang and dialects when we speak in our Malaysian English.
Yes,
That's right.
yes, yes.
All right.
This is what I mean.
All right. So I think that's all for our interview session. And thank you so much to Mr. Osama. Yes, that
You are
I'm
welcome.
right. I'm right,
You are, yes,
Mr.
Osama. Yeah.
Osama. Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So thank you so much to Mr. Osama to spend his time to share about his thoughts and his answer to answer all of my question. And I hope you are always in a good health and
Thank you.
uh,
Thank you.
and 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 everything goes well in the future. So
Thank you. You are much welcome. It was a pleasure to have this nice discussion with you, and wish you the best in your assignment and in your study.
alright, so we continue. So my name is Muhammad Amri Zikri Maidi and my number ID is SEC 23070190. And so I will continue with the next interview session. And let me introduce my interviewee background. His full name is Osama Yahya Goda Ahmed Ghanim, and his country of origin is from Egypt. And right now, currently, he is a student and also research assistant of University Technology Petronas (UTP). And his educational background is in Master in Civil Engineering and History English. He uses English as communication tool with others. So we move to the summary of findings and reflection from aspect number one. So the question is, were there any main historical events that led to the spread of English in your country? And Mr. Osama explained about the British occupation in 1882 until 1956 contribute to the spread of the English in Egypt. So we move to the next summary of findings and reflection from aspect number 2. So the question that I asked to him is, English being used as an official language for education in your country. And Mr. Osama highlights the English is not official language in his country, but English is widely used in education field, especially in private and international school, and also in some universities. So, for the next slides, the summary of findings and reflection from aspect number 3. The question is, how has English evolved and progressed your country over the years? And Mr. Osama emphasized the English is important for business, education, tourism, and technology sector. So we move to the next slide, the summary of findings and reflection from aspect number 4. So the question is, how do you feel about English becoming more dominant in your daily life? And Mr. Osama feels that English is the worldwide language and it is a power tool to start and make connection with others. But it can overshadow the mother tongue also. So the summary of findings and reflection from aspect number 5 is, the question that I asked to him is, it difficult for you to understand English based on how it sounds? And can you give some example? And he replied that he has some problems to understand with some accents and slangs. He also faced some difficulty to understand some words in media. And the summary of findings. We move to the next slide, which is the summary of findings and reflection from aspect number 6. So the question is, are there any English sounds that does not exist in your native language? How do you handle them? And Mr. Osama gives some examples like B sounds. Is that never exists in Arabic and he normally pronounce it with B sounds. He also explains it is a common mistake they always do in Egypt, but he can handle it by exposure and practice. So the last summary of findings and reflection from aspect number 7 is: do you find Malaysian English dialects and accents difficult to understand? Can you share your experience? And Mr. Osama had some difficulty and experience with Malaysia English dialects and accents because Malaysian also put some Malay words when speaking in English like lah, but he can adapt it easily after living in Malaysia for many years. So for my justification from the interview session is English spread in Egypt through British occupation starting in 1882 until 1956, the 19th century. Right now, the English language has become the language of business, education, tourism and technology sector. Nevertheless, Mr. Osama has no issue with using English in his daily life as it's used worldwide language and a power tool that allows him to communicate well with others. So that's all for me. I will pass to the next presenter.
So let's get started. Good day, Miss Emilia. It's a pleasure to meet you,
Yeah.
and thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me in this interview.
Now, before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Amakim bin Amazan, and I am a student from KPMSI Mara. Now, can you tell us about yourself, your general background, and what you are currently doing now, and which country you're from?
Okay. Thank you so much. My name is Amelia, and I'm from Indonesia. The part of Lombok, Indonesia, and then now I'm 22 years old. And by the way, I am a student of tourism, halal tourism, or halal Sharia, in one university, which is UIN Mataram. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for sharing yourself. Now, let's move on to our first question, shall we? Now,
Okay.
first, were there any main historical events that led to the spread of English in your country?
So for me, I think the main historical event that led to the spread of English in Indonesia was when we gained independence in 1945, and after that, Indonesia started to open up to the world, and English become an important tool for international communication. Then, with the rise of the internet and social media, English just become a part of our daily lives.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Okay, now moving
Yeah.
on to the next question. Um,
Mm-mm.
is English being used as an official language for education in your country?
Yeah, English is a compulsory subject in school here. We start learning English at elementary school and it gets more intense in high school. Some school even over English language program or international curriculum. So English is definitely a big part of our education system.
I see, I see. Now, next question. How has English evolved and progressed your country over the years?
So I think English has influenced so much in Indonesia over the years. We've gone from just learning English in school to actually using in our daily life. Now We have English language TV shows, movies, and music everywhere. Even our social media is filled with English. It's crazy how much English has influenced with our culture.
Thank you. Okay. Now
Yeah.
to the fourth question. How do you
Mhm.
feel about English becoming more dominant in your daily life?
Okay, honestly, I'm kind of natural about English become more dominate in my daily life. On one hand, it's really helpful for communicating with people from other country like you and me right now and accessing information online. On the other hand, I feel like we're losing some of our Indonesian culture and language. It's a trait of something like that, I guess.
Okay, okay, understand. Okay, moving to the next question. Is
Mhm.
it difficult for you to understand English based on how it sounds? Example? Give me some examples of it.
Uh, okay, sometimes I feel it hurt to understand English when it's spoken really fast or with a strong accent. Like, for example, when I'm watching a YouTube video or listening to a podcast, like English podcast, and the speaker is talking really quickly, like we sometimes they use British accent or Australian accent. It's so make me confusing, and I have to rewind it a few times to catch what they are really saying.
Okay, okay, I see. Okay. Now, moving to the other question. Are there any
Mhm.
English? Are there any English? Are there any English sounds that does not exist in your native language? How do you handle them?
Handling not accident sounds right.
Yes. Like how do you
Yeah,
handle
yeah.
the
They are continue.
what?
Okay, yeah. There are some English sounds that doesn't don't exist in Indonesia, like the T sound, like T and H. You know,
Oh,
sound. Yeah, sound. Yeah. At first, it was hard for me to pronounce, but I practiced a lot, and now it's not being a big problem for me, and I just try to mimic native speakers and listen to how they pronounce the word.
okay, okay. Okay, thank you. Now, moving to the last question. Do you
Mhm.
find Malaysian English dialects and accents difficult to understand? Can you please share your experience?
About understanding Malaysian English dialect, to be honest, I found some Malaysian English dialects and accent a bit hard to understand because I have friends from Malaysia, and sometimes I have to ask them to repeat themselves because I don't catch what they are saying exactly. But it's not a big deal. We just laugh about it and move on.
Ah,
That's it.
okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. Now, that's all for the discussion today. Thank you so much, Mr. Milia, for
Mhm.
joining our interview today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much to you. My pleasure.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
hope your assessment is good.
Assalamualaikum and hello. My name is Ahmad Hakim bin Ahmad Zan. Today I'm going to present our presentation about the outer about our outer countries. Uh, Interview. Fendi. Interview background is our interview background is Emilia Putri. Full name is Emilia Putri. Her country of origin is Indonesia. Her occupation, she's basically a student of UIN Mataram. Her educational background is a degree in halal tourism and Sharia studies. History in English, she basically uses English to communicate with others. So, first question. We asked her, were there any main historical events that led to the spread of English in her country? Miss Amelia states that it was when her country gained independence back in 1945, and after that her country started to be more open to the world, making English an important tool for international communication with others. Question 2. We asked her, is English being used as an official language for education in your country? Based on our analysis, the schools in Indonesia teaches English as a secondary subject, and children there started learning it back in elementary school. Some schools in Indonesia even offer some English language programs or international curriculums. Question 3. We asked her, how has English evolved and progressed your country over the years? Based on her response, English has evolved so much in Indonesia throughout the years. It has grown from just learning English in schools to people actually using it in their daily lives. Nowadays, the English language is everywhere. They're ranging from TV shows to movies and even music as well. Yo, we asked her, how do you feel about English becoming more dominant in your daily life? Miss Emilia states that she feels fine with it being more dominant in her daily life due to it being really helpful in communicating with other people and accessing information online. However, she also expresses concerns about the loss of her Indonesian culture and language. Next question we asked her, is it difficult for you to understand English based on how it sounds? Example, she based on her response, when English is spoken really fast or with a strong accent, she faces difficulty understanding it. For example, when she watches a YouTube video or listening to a podcast, some English speakers tend to talk too fast or talk in a different accent, like in British or Australian, resulting in confusion within herself, thus forcing her to rewind it to fully understand. Next question, we asked her, are there any English sounds that does not exist in your native language? How do you handle them? Based on analysis, Miss Amelia says that the t sound does not exist in her native language. It was hard for her to pronounce it at first, but was quickly able to adapt to it over time with practice by mimicking native speakers and listen to how they pronounce the word. Our final question to her, do you find Malaysian English dialects and accents difficult to understand? Can you share your experience? Based on based on her response, we realized that Miss Emilia expresses her issues in comprehending Malaysian English dialects. She states that when she had a conversation with a friend from Malaysia, she sometimes had to ask to repeat themselves again due to the lack of understanding of what they are actually saying. Now, for our justification, following Indonesia's independence in 1945, English became widely spread when they were more open to the outside world. English basically became an essential tool for international communication due to the emergence of the internet and social media presence in daily life, elevating it to the status of a global communication language. Despite the few challenges, Miss Emilia has adjusted well to speaking English, while she occasionally struggles with different accents and pronunciation. Consistent practice and exposure have helped her improve overall. That's all for me. Now, moving on to the next presenter.
Yes. All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Ijaz. And before we start, can you start by introducing yourself first?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Abdullah. I'm from Saudi Arabia, and I'm UTP student. I'm doing chemical engineering, and I'm happy to be here today.
Right. So, for the first questions, um, in your country, were there any main historical events that led the spread of English?
First of all, I would say that uh, English took place in Saudi late a bit comparing to other countries, and that's because Saudi never been colonized by English-speaking countries. But I would say the main reason that led to spread English in Saudi is the discovery of crude oil in 1938, if I'm not mistaken. And because once we discovered the crude oil, we needed to have a connection with English-speaking countries such as US and the UK. And from that point, English started to take place in Saudi.
All right. For the next question, is English being used for educational purposes in your country?
Yeah, I would say yeah. English has a part in the education system in Saudi Arabia. We study it, but only in the high school and universities, and also some specific programs.
Mm, how do you feel about English becoming more dominant in your life, in your daily life?
Okay, I believe English is so important, so vital to us because, for example, right now you are Malaysian, I'm Saudi, we can communicate with each other using English. So it's really important for us, and also it helps us to engage with different people from different countries, different backgrounds. It's important, but for me, it's not the more dominant in daily life yet. Not the more dominant. I'm still using Arabic. As you know, because I'm Arab, I glorify Arabic because it's the language of the Quran. So English cannot be the more dominant in my daily life, but I use it.
MashaAllah, I understand that. All right. Next questions. Is it difficult for you to understand English based on how it sounds?
From the first pace, English is challenging a bit, and that's why, excuse me, but English is a stupid language. In every language in the world, you pronounce the word as you read it. So the pronunciation won't be different. But in English, no, it doesn't work. But that doesn't make it unusable because we use it. It helps us more. So it's still important, even though it's a stupid language.
I understand. All
I
right.
mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah, we are. That is what we are trying to get from you, your opinion and your experience getting to learn English. Right. Next question: are there any English sounds that does not exist in your native language? And if
Yeah,
so, how do you handle them? All right.
okay. There are many sounds in English doesn't exist in Arabic, and many sounds that make zero sense for me. How to handle it? Actually, it's for me it's difficult at the beginning. It's difficult, but with practice, it become more easier. For example, the letter P. The letter P. It's too difficult for Arab to pronounce P. Unlike Malaysian, it's exist in your language. In Bahasa, the letter P exists, but in Arabic, it doesn't. So I faced some difficulties. And for me, I've been practicing like around 3 years just to differentiate between Pepsi, Pepsi, Pep Guardiola, Pep Guardiola, just because the sound doesn't make sense. But with practice, get used to it.
All right. Now, for the last question, do you find Malaysian English dialects and also their accents difficult to understand?
I think the best thing about English that you experience different accents, like based on different countries, based on different people speak English. For me, I think the Malaysian English accent is perfect. I never faced any issues with dealing with Malaysians. No, actually, they speak really good English. Even I met some Malaysian people that they didn't study or they didn't go to school, but still they could communicate and they could speak really good English. So for me, I don't think I had any problem with Malaysian accent. For me, I see it as a unique thing here.
Thank you very much. That will be all for the interview today. Thank you so much, Mr. Abdullah. Do you have any messages that you would like to spread?
I think to improve English, as I don't want to say this as I'm lecturing people. No, take it as I'm also practicing English. So we all need to improve each other. So I think with practice, everything can be easier for all of us, not only for English, for everything. You may think it's difficult with practice, you could make it easier. So thank you so much for the interview. I really appreciate you choosing me. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I hope you get full mark, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, Mr. Abdullah. I hope we can meet again. Until next
Inshallah.
time, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Ijaz, SEC 230701118 from DEC 5C. For my interview, I interviewed Mr. Abdullah Awad Al-Harthi from Saudi Arabia. He is a student from UTP and he is currently studying chemical engineering. For his history in English, he uses English to communicate with others. And now to begin, for question number 1, which is, were there any main historical events that led to the spread of English in your country? Mr. Abdullah responses by stating that English spread later in Saudi Arabia compared to other countries, which is because the country was never colonized by an English-speaking nation. He attributes that the spread of English to the is because of the discovery of crude oil in 1938, which also led to increased interaction with English-speaking countries like US and UK. For question number 2, is English being used as an official language for education in your country? Mr. Abdullah confirms that English is part of the Saudi education system, but is mainly taught in high school, universities, and some basic programs. Next is for question number 3, which is, how has English evolved and progressed in your country over the years? Mr. Abdullah states that English started to evolve from the use for business to the use for education and then for communication. For question number 4, question phrase, how do you feel about English becoming more dominant in your daily life? Mr. Abdullah acknowledged that English is an important global language, especially for communication with people from different backgrounds. However, he asserts that Arabic still remains his dominant language,
as it is the language of the Quran and integral to his daily life. For question number 5, is it difficult for you to understand English based on how it sounds? And also give an example. Mr. Abdullah finds the English pronunciation challenging and also call it stupid language, but that is because the words are not pronounced as they are written. Despite this, he also acknowledged that English remains an important and useful language. For question number 6, the question is, are there any English sounds that does not exist in your native language? The follow-up question being, how do you handle them? Mr. Abdullah mentions that many English sounds does not exist in Arabic, particularly the letter P, which is difficult to pronounce because it is not the letter P does not exist in Arabic. He admits that pronunciation was challenging at first, but then after practice over 3 years, he have improved. Question number 7. Do you find Malaysian English dialects and accents difficult to understand? Follow-up question, can you share your experience? Mr. Abdullah appreciates the diversity of English accents worldwide and finds the Malaysian English accent easy to understand. His response highlights the adaptability of Malaysian English speakers, and he also praises Malaysian for their good English skills, even for those who did not receive formal education. For my justification, the spread of English in Saudi Arabia is largely due to economic globalization after the discovery of crude oil in 1938, which also led to the partnership with English-speaking countries like the US and the UK. English in Saudi Arabia is a secondary language, mainly used in business, higher education, and international communication, while Arabic remains dominant in their daily life. And also his perspective, my interviewee perspective reflects global trends where English is a lingua franca rather than a native language in non-English speaking countries.
For compare and contrast, we chose phonology as our aspect. For expanding countries, Miss Amelia from Indonesia struggles with accent or fast-paced conversations, as well as non-existent th sound in her native language. However, this is overcome by mimicking and following the pronunciation of native speakers. Next, from Saudi Arabia, Mr. Abdullah faces the same problems as Miss Amelia, as he disapproves of the confusing nature of pronunciation and spelling in English. The p sounds gives him the most difficulties as it is absent from his native language, which is Arabic. Next, for our two countries, due to prior history in English, the colonization left a lasting impression on Nigeria as it had allowed Nigerians to use English to this day. As such, Nigerians typically do not have any problems with English and only share troubles with borrowed words. And lastly, Egypt. Mr. Osama stated that some Egyptians face troubles in English as they mainly rely on Arabic to communicate. However, colonization from the 18th to 19th century has left Egypt with the use of English. Nonetheless, due to the effects of Arabic, again, they struggle to pronounce the sound p. And lastly for me, the similarities and differences for question 5. I found that for similarities, is that both interviewees from Egypt and Saudi Arabia find trouble in the English pronunciation and spelling, as they stated that slangs and accents can affect the sound and therefore the register of the conversation. And for differences, our interviewee from Indonesia struggles with fast-paced conversations, due to her lack of proficiency in English. Compared to other interviewees who can smoothly understand standard English, this is admittedly a self issue. And that's all for me. Moving on to the next presenter. Thank you.
Next, I will be presenting the similarities and differences for question number 6. Question number 6, which is, are there any English sounds that does not exist in your native language, and how do you handle them? For the similarities, interviewees from Egypt and Saudi both struggles to pronounce words with the letter P, as the letter does not exist in Arabic. In Arabic, they use the letter B to substitute for the letter P. And for the differences, interviewee from Nigeria stated that it is not difficult for him to understand due to the similarities between Standard English and Nigerian Pidgin English. An interviewee from Indonesia started to pronounce words with the T sound as it does not exist in her language. Next is for question number 7. Do you find Malaysian English dialects and accents difficult to understand? Follow up, can you share your experience? For the similarities, both interviewees from Nigeria and Saudi Arabia does not struggle with understanding the Malaysian English dialects and accents. And both interviewees from Egypt and Indonesia struggles to understand the Malaysian English dialects and accents. For the differences, while Mr. Osama and Miss Amelia struggles to follow Malaysian English and had to adapt over the years, Mr. Samuel and Mr. Abdullah had no problem with speaking in English with the locals. Lastly is the usage of English for expanding countries. The first one is Indonesia. English is not an official language in Indonesia, but it is widely used in education, media, and global communication, especially after gaining independence in 1945. It is even taught in schools with some offering international curriculum. Next is Saudi Arabia. The spread of English in Saudi Arabia is largely due to economic globalization. English in Saudi Arabia is a secondary language mainly used in business, higher education, and international communication, while Arabic remains dominant in daily life. For outer countries, first one is Nigeria. English is the official language of Nigeria. It serves as a lingua franca, connecting people from different backgrounds and tribes. A majority of Nigerians speak Nigerian Pidgin English. However, there are varying levels of proficiency, with many Nigerians speaking Igbo as their native language. Last one is Egypt. English is not an official language in Egypt. Nonetheless, the usage of the English language is widely used in business, education, tourism, and technology sector after occupation of British around 18th to 19th century. That will be all from me.
Now, for our summary and reflection on expanding countries. In Indonesia, English grew after gaining independence and expanded further with the rise of the internet and social media. In Saudi Arabia, the oil discovery in 1938 led to partnerships with English-speaking nations, boosting its use in business and education. Despite all that, English still remains a secondary language in both countries, complementing their native tongues while supporting global connections. Both interviews shows that English has grown due to globalization, technology advancements, and economic growth. As these countries connected to the worldwide global economy, it reinforced its role as a key tool for international communication across borders with many benefits to it. Now, that's all for now. Next, moving on to the next presenter.